Welcome back to Houston Newsmakers. I've been talking with Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, Democrat from the 7th Congressional District. You've been appointed to the pro-choice caucus, and it is about abortion or reproductive rights for women in this country, dramatically changed once the Supreme Court overruled Roe versus Wade. What's the main focus of your caucus? What do you hope to achieve?
Well, the pro-choice caucus that I've been a member of since I arrived in Congress is really focused on ensuring access to reproductive health care and access to abortion care for women in all 50 states. This year, I've been appointed the whip of the pro-choice caucus, so I'm now in the leadership and have a responsibility. And I think it's really important to bring the experience from Texas and from people here to that conversation in Washington, because what we see here is that Texas is really at the epicenter of efforts to restrict access to abortion care. And speaking of voting rights, it's very out of sync with what the majority of Texans want. There was a poll that came out last summer from the University of Texas that said only 15% of Texans support the state of the law as it is right now in Texas, which is a total ban on access to abortion. So it's very important that our voices are heard in Washington about what's happening here and that we're working to protect the right to access to abortion. We passed a bill in the last Congress, the Women's Health Protection Act, that would effectively create a statutory right in all 50 states to have access to abortion care and for doctors to provide abortion care to patients, and to get rid of some of these restrictions that are not medically necessary that we've seen states like ours enact over the years.
But that's not in place.
Important. It's not in place. It passed the House,
right,
and President Biden has said he will sign it. It did not pass the Senate. We had another bill that I introduced in Congress that I think is very important, especially after yesterday there was a decision in Idaho from the legislature there, restricting the right to travel. We're hearing that in Texas, too, that some of our lawmakers and others are saying that because you can't get abortion care in Texas, you can't leave the state and get it in a state where it's legal. So I introduced a bill to protect the constitutional right to travel. That is one of the key privileges and immunities in our Constitution, in the 14th Amendment, to make sure that we can freely travel between the states. And that passed the House as well. Again, didn't make it through the Senate. I've reintroduced it this year. Also, the next thing is access to contraception. We voted on that in the House last year. That passed the House too. And shockingly, only 9 of my Republican colleagues in Congress voted for the right for people across the United States to have access to contraception that works for them. So a lot of challenges ahead when it comes to our ability to control our bodies, our families, and our futures.
Let's talk about energy. Your district has been known for a long time, oil and energy and all that in that area, formerly the George H.W. Bush's district, and a lot of folk there still really focus on a lot of energy issues. Oil and gas, big subject. You recently toured sites for cleanup. Talk about that. There's some orphaned oil and gas wells. What's that all about, and why should we care?
That's right. Well, this is another thing I'm really proud of from the 117th Congress, but continuing today, which is I introduced a bill in Congress to clean up orphaned oil and gas wells, abandoned oil and gas wells, where there's no operator there to plug them when they're no longer producing. They are risks for our communities and our environment. And so the state of Texas has for 40 years been cleaning them up, but there are many more wells than resources to do it. So a bill that I introduced in Congress was made part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And Secretary Holland, the Secretary of the Interior, came last week to tour some of the sites here in the Houston area that the Railroad Commission is working to plug right now. And it's hugely important. And when I introduced the bill, it was during the height of COVID, challenges for folks who work in the business as the rig count was going down, to make sure that there was access to work. This would create good jobs, but also would address environmental contamination and concerns, whether it's emissions from those wells or leaking oil right into the ground there that could contaminate groundwater. So we're seeing a huge increase in that work here in Texas. And actually, one of the representatives from the Railroad Commission said last week that this bill and this money coming in from the Investment in Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has been a game changer for Texas. So I'm really excited about that.
And that is good news for those folk who like clean water, clean air, all of those things kind of tie together. Hey, an historic event this past week, former President Trump arraigned on more than 30 charges related to violation of campaign finance laws. Your thoughts, if you have any, about that indictment and whether or not it's got legs. Any thoughts at all about what's going on? Because it is historic.
Well, it is historic, and I think it's important for us to understand and note that this is the first time this has happened in United States history. But it reflects, I think, a fundamental principle that we should all appreciate, which is no one, the president, the former president, is above the law in the United States. And the corollary principle is that in criminal cases, you're innocent until proven guilty. So that case will play out in the courts. I don't think that members of Congress should have a role. I know a lot of people have spoken out about the charges, but we don't know all the charges. That's up to the jury in New York. I think we need to focus on the things that Congress should be doing. And certainly I have weighed in when it was appropriate for Congress to weigh in. But I think here, we need to understand the historic significance, and we need to understand that no person's above the law. We're constantly striving to make a more perfect union, and it's very important that we continue to protect our institutions, our legislative work, our judicial branch, and of course work together in all the ways we can for the benefit of people across America.
Well, this is certainly uncharted water for all of us, and we'll have to see how it comes out. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for the focus on what you're doing. Clearly, you got a lot going on. That's a good thing.
Well,
for all of
Khambrel,
us, so
I always
appreciate it.
love seeing you, and I'm always glad to talk with you. Thanks for everything you do for our community and keeping everybody informed about all the things happening.
You have an open invite always to come here.
Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
you.